It's the northern pintail and has a long, thin neck. And the long, thin neck looks even more dramatic because that white stripe that goes up behind the back of the head. And again, you can see this really fine patterning, just like the gadwall. It's the same gray and white patterning of the gadwall. You have a black butt and then this super long tail, which is why they're called pintail. And you can see in flight there's a very elegant looking flight, much thinner than a mallard and much thinner than all the other dabbling ducks, with a white on the neck, a green speculum with a white at the back of the green speculum. So very distinctive both in the water and in flight, if you just notice how slim and trim the bird looks.
Greg, can you tell the new folks what a speculum is?
So the speculum
Point it
is
out with the mouse.
it's easiest to show on this photograph because it's the colorful part on the wing. And so it's the back inner part of the wing. So the outer part of the wing, the feathers in the back are the primaries, and the feathers on the back of the inner part of the wing are the secondaries. And in dabbling ducks, all those secondaries are colorful, and so they're called a speculum.
Thank you.
How about that for a little vocabulary?
Good.
So you can't tell on these slides, but this is a tiny little duck. So when a duck is called a teal, it means it's a small dabbling duck. And these green-winged teal are tiny, but very distinctive. Again, notice the patterning, the gray and white patterning on the side. This bird has more white on its butt than black and has a little white line. The males have this little white line that goes down to the water and a green and cinnamon head. The female is all brown like a female mallard, but much smaller. But the speculum and everything is very similar to a mallard. So it's important to see the males, and they usually hang out, males and females together. So the easiest way to tell green-winged teal is the small male accompanied by a small female. And again, a much smaller duck, so much smaller, higher pitched sound. So we have 5 species of bay ducks, and the least common is the greater scaup. We have the scaup are very difficult to tell apart, but almost all the scaup around here are lesser scaup. So on the left is the canvasback, and on the right is the redhead. And they're very similar, but they're actually pretty distinctive, especially the males, because the canvasback has a white, off-white back. I guess they call it a canvas because it's a clear canvas for painting on. So it's pretty white. And then the other really interesting thing about canvasback is it has a funny slope to the head. The head, it has a long, long forehead leading into the beak, and it's very distinctive among all the ducks around here to have that shape of head. The redhead has a nice rounded head and a very gray back. They both have black fronts and black butts. The redhead has a pale gray beak. The canvasback has a very black beak. In flight, the male canvasbacks look very white. There's a female, looks brown, hang out with the males. And the redheads are much more compact. So these birds look kind of long and slim, a little bit like a pintail. But of course, they have much more white on the back than a pintail does. And the redheads are much more compact, more the shape of a mallard. I saw both these species yesterday at Burke Lake. So I saw many more red tails than I I saw many more redheads at Burke Lake than I expected to see, about equal numbers of canvasbacks and redheads there. So here's one of the trickiest identifications we have to work on here. The bird on the left here is a lesser scaup because the head is relatively tall and the nail on the beak is relatively missing. They both have gray backs and white sides, but here a green rounded head. So green is for greater scaup, or greater is for green and scaup. This bird tends to have a more purplish head, although depending on how the light hits it, the purple can look green and the green can look purple. So it's the shape of the head that is most useful. And here on the Potomac River in fresh water, the lesser scaup is much more common. Uh, Belmont Bay is the most common area for lesser scaup. We can have up to 4,000 lesser scaup in Belmont Bay.
Wow.
All these birds in flight are greater scaup. You can tell because they have white on the outer wings. So the primaries have white on them as well as the secondaries. On a lesser scaup, the white is only on the secondaries, and the outer wing, the primaries, don't have that white on it. It's a little bit tough to see in flight, but it really works if you can get a look at that. And you
Well,
can see over here the green head of the greater scaup in flight.
Greg, what was it that you said about the beak? That it was something was missing?
So they call this a nail. See the tip of the beak of the greater scaup? It's kind of a different color, and it kind of protrudes a little bit, so they call that a black nail.
Oh,
And if you look at the lesser scaup, it's got a bit of a nail, but it doesn't have any different color. And
hmm.
so there's no color contrast on the tip. And
Okay.
if you can see that, you're going to be really close to the bird. Yeah.
We had a request from the audience. Which one
Yeah.
has more white?
So greater has greater amounts of white.
Okay.
Greater has a green head and greater amounts of white. And so if the whole back of the wing is white, it's a greater scaup. And if it has lesser amounts of white in the wing, so that it's only on the interior part of the wing or the secondaries, the lesser scaup has less white in the wing. So it's a really pointy head and has a really intricate bill. Notice on the male and female, they've got this white ring in front of the black tip of the bill. And on the male, it has white on the base of the bill too. So it's white, gray, white, black. So it's a very complicated bill that you don't have in the scaup. And you have a black back. Scaup have a gray back, and ringneck ducks have a black back. And uh, the lesser scaup tend to be out in the middle of the bay. The ringneck ducks tend to be closer to shore, and so they're fairly easy to see. Now you can't see on this photo, but the white line here near the black front of the bird is brighter than the gray sides, and of course much brighter than the black back. And there's some iridescence on the head, which makes you think lesser scaup. But when you see the fancy bill and the black back, you know that it is a ringneck duck and not a lesser scaup.